Hi guys, this is Fernando doing another video for the Modern Survivalist. First of all, I wanted to thank all of you for your support, for subscribing and your comments and such. It's been great so far, and thanks to you guys, those of you who subscribed, I'm now able to do longer videos. I'm not no longer have the 15-minute limit for my videos, so just wanted to say that thanks that because of you I now can do better videos. So in this case, the topic of this particular video is in some way a continuation of what we've seen in the previous two. The first one being about how the economy collapsed in Argentina in December 2001, and then with the devaluation in 2002. And the second part was about the comparison between what happened then and what could possibly happen if something similar ever occurs in USA. So the obvious comment and thing being said by the viewers was, well, what would be your advice? What would be your suggestions in case that ever happens in USA? So that's why I came up with this list of 10 things to do before the economy collapses, which is pretty much my advice based on what happened, what I experienced personally here in Argentina when the economy collapsed, and what I know of USA. I've lived in USA for 3 years when I was a little kid. I traveled to USA almost every year for lots of time, so I do know USA pretty well. It's not as if I'm stuck here in Argentina and have never seen anything else and have no clue of what USA is like. I actually do. I have a pretty good idea of what USA is like. I've been there I've been in Texas last year during May, and as I said before, I've traveled all of my life to USA rather frequently, so I do know what it's like. And so that's my little list, my suggestions for you guys, asking what should what should you be doing so as to prepare if something like this ever happens over there. So let's get started, because each little topic, each little point has a few things to be said about it. First of all, my top of the list is buying a handgun and learn how to use it. Okay, that's of course about being able to physically defend yourself if it ever comes to that. When the economy collapses, there's going to be lots of desperate people. There's going to be lots of people taking advantage probably of the lack of police reply, the cops not being able to deal with everything at the same time. When there's looting, when there's rioting all over, cops just don't have the manpower to deal with everything. So it's understandable that during those times it's gonna be getting a bit more dangerous around your neighborhood and such. So buying a handgun and learning how to use it. Folks, if you don't know how to use it, by learning how to use it, I mean actually taking a defensive shooting class, not just shooting paper in the range or just shooting a few cans in the backyard if you live in the country. I'm actually talking about taking a class, putting the money into it. It's not that expensive in USA really, so it's worth its weight. I don't like saying worth its weight in gold because it's kind of misleading, but it's even worth more than its weight in gold to actually know how to use it. If you don't know how to use your firearm, how to run it, it's just like having a car, buying the fanciest, best possible vehicle and not knowing how to drive it. It's that different from just learning how to pull the trigger and knowing how to use that firearm in terms of self-defense. There's also the very real concern of not injuring yourself or others when using that weapon in a scenario where you are under stress. You need to train so as to properly perform in those situations, and for people that haven't got the necessary training, it may happen that you end up hurting yourself or a loved one because you just don't know how to handle your firearm in the situation. So learning how to use it is just as important as having the tool, the firearm itself. I've previously been very emphatic about buying a firearm, buying a weapon, having a weapon so as to defend yourself. If you cannot own firearms, then a knife or whatever it is, so as to be able to defend yourself when cornered, when not having any other option. Lately, I've understood that there's people that just aren't responsible enough or don't have the personality to own a firearm, so I suggest doing a bit of soul search and being honest with yourself. There's people out there that just shouldn't own a firearm because they lack the personality for it. I've suggested emphatically to some people in the past to get a firearm. They got it, and later I understood that they don't have the personality required to use a lethal weapon if it ever comes to that. If you are childish, if you cannot control yourself during half stressful situations, if you cannot control yourself even during a common everyday argument, and you start getting, you know, threatening people, I'm gonna kill you, I'm gonna show up by your house and, you know, kill you or hurt you or whatever. If you don't have that basic self-control, then honestly you really shouldn't own a firearm. And if I've suggested that in the past and you happen to own one and you fit this description I'm telling right now, do yourself lots of good, do your family lots of good as well, and sell that firearm, because you just don't have the mindset to handle a weapon, a lethal weapon, such as a handgun or a rifle or whatever it is you got. So, but going back, if you're a law-abiding citizen, if you have some grip over your emotions, then having a firearm is important, and it's the tool that you would be using to defend yourself if it ever comes to that. Again, the training is extremely important as well. One other thing before I move on to the next point is some people have commented that it would be different in Argentina than in USA because there's more guns in USA. That's kind of an anti-gun type of comment, because guns don't mean that people are more violent. Guns are simply the tool violent people or law-abiding people use as well. Either one, use it to either defend themselves or hurt others. If people use knives to kill innocent people, it's just a tool as well. It's not the fault of the tool being used. So it's kind of an anti-gun type of comment. And just so as to explain it better, there's lots of guns in Argentina. It's one of the most armed societies in South America. So even though we don't have mail order AK-47s, unfortunately, there's more than enough guns to get by. And the ones that are better armed of all people around here are criminals. They get their arms directly from the police. They get them from the military when they just buy them from military depots illegally. They steal them from the police, and they are terribly well armed. They have all sorts of pistols, they have body armor, they have submachine guns, and they have battle rifles as well, such as the FAL. They have everything they could possibly want. It's not hard at all to get a firearm in the black market in Argentina, and criminals do get them. So that's really not a point. That just shows that you don't really know how things are down here. So I thought I would just explain it. Moving on to point 2, start carrying essential preparedness gear on daily basis. That's your EDC or everyday carry. That would be something like having a folding knife with you, a multi-tool in your pocket, a flashlight, one of the latest LEDs that are terribly efficient. The battery goes on for days on the low mode, so that would be some of the things that go for EDC or everyday carry. I've done a video on EDC before, so check it out. You will find some good ideas over there. There's also a post I made in my blog, and it's called, I think it's the perfect $99 EDC, and I just looked for some of the best items within that price range and put together a very decent, very nice actually EDC kit for just $99. Turned out pretty well. People liked that post, and I suggest it because if you're just getting started, it would probably give you some good ideas. Why would you need this, and what has this got to do with the economy collapsing? Well, everything just works worse after the economy collapses. The services, the rescue teams are less likely to show up when you need them. You get stuck in places and help is not likely to show up at all. Same thing with the police. Of course, if you're getting shot in the middle of the Obelisco in downtown or in front of the presidential palace, there is police. There's lots of police in downtown Buenos Aires, but that's not the point. The point is that in general services are lacking because of a lack of infrastructure, because of lack of funds. There's just not enough money to get by, and all these things suffer. Everyone does its best, and the brave men that serve in the police and in the fire department, they do their best, but there's limited funds, there's limited gear and supplies. So you really have to get used to coping with problems yourself, okay? As a general rule for a post-economic collapse society where everything doesn't work as well as it usually did, if you get stuck with your vehicle, even if you have a vehicle emergency service, I do have it, so do most people around here, but you still have to understand that it's not unthinkable that they will not be fulfilling their role, the thing you contract them for, because things just don't work as well as they did before. So it's better if you know how to fix your vehicle yourself. It's better if you know how to get out of trouble yourself. If you get stuck in the subway, in the train, if it breaks down, as it often does, you need to walk out of the wagons yourself, walk through maybe a dark tunnel in the subway. You'll be needing a flashlight. You may be needing a multi-tool to open a door. There's many things that you will be needing some basic tools with you so as to get by. So that's why it's important to have your basic supplies, your basic essential preparedness gear with you at all times. So check the video, check the blog with that post because it has some good stuff in it. 3. Stock up on food and water. Long-term storage food, of course. I'm talking about canned goods. In USA you have the option of ordering long-term storage food that it's already prepared for you. Some of the places have good prices. There's good variety of products, of foodstuffs. So look into that, see what works for you, the type of food you usually consume. Don't make the mistake of buying food that you've never tried before. Buy a small supply first, or ask for an example, or just buy a can or two, or a bucket or two, the smaller ones, so as to try them out. See if you like it, if your family eats it as well. Makes no sense to stock up on foodstuffs that you have never tried before and your family may not be liking. The idea of the food supply at home is that you will be using it either during emergencies such as a civil unrest where supermarkets may be closed for a few days, a few weeks, who knows. During those times you just cannot count on supermarkets being open. There's looters out there picking them clean. There's civil unrest. The guys just close down the curtains, they put a few guards and make sure it doesn't get looted, and it's closed for an undetermined period of time. It happened here in Argentina. Some of them opened in the middle of the day. You would be making your shoppings, and the mass of gentlemen requiring food being delivered to them would show up, and the employees would run around just trying to close everything as fast as they could, or just negotiating with the people demanding food and seeing if they could come to an arrangement so that they wouldn't destroy the place completely. It happened to me when I was in a supermarket with my wife. The employees actually started making barricades with the shopping carts. You know, when they put them like all together, one stuck with the other. Well, they would use that and with a rope, getting them together, making a barricade. It was pretty interesting. And they actually ended up negotiating with the people that showed up, and the employees of the supermarket would later run in and out, just leaving shopping bags in the floor of the garage so that these folks could take them and not trash the place completely. There were days when supermarkets didn't even open, understandably so. because of all the civil unrest. So you really don't know how long this would actually last. It may be that things are actually a bit worse than you expected, and it may be a couple of weeks before they reopen. There may be problems with resupplies. It's 2011, guys, and it was just last week when a truck full of cows had mechanical problems in the middle of the road, and the people of that neighborhood just got out their knives and butchered the cows in the middle of the road. This had happened in 2002 or 2003, I think, just after the crisis. It's 2011 right now, and we're supposedly over all that, but actually that happened last week. People just kill and slaughter the cows. They just beat them to death, some of them that didn't have any other tool. They beat them to death and butchered them however they could and took the chunks of meat to their homes. It's pretty barbaric, and even 10 years after the economy collapsed, we're still seeing these things that were unthinkable before. People getting desperate over a few pounds of meat because meat is terribly expensive, and whenever they see the possibility of taking some for them, they do things that aren't exactly that legal. I think in this particular case, the owner of these cows showed up and said he basically surrendered the cows that were most injured, and they killed them right there. When these things happen, just like when I mentioned before, the supermarket manager dealing with the looters, saying, okay, I understand your point. Take this. I'm offering you this. Please don't trash everything. Something similar happened with these cows in the truck. The guy showed up and said, okay, just take these ones and please leave me the ones that are still okay. I'm gonna be taking them. And they sort of reach an agreement so as to not lose everything you have. So you see, I always talk about things not being black and white. The extremist thing of we're going to be killing everyone and it's going to be Mad Max out there, it's going to be everyone to himself, and shooting looters and the good guys banding together and living in retreats and stuff. It's all a gray blur. Even the guys that are breaking the law, maybe they're not as bad as the most brutal criminals. Maybe they're just guys, maybe there's just people in a very complicated personal situation because their salary just isn't enough to get by. They have a wounded animal in their doorstep. They have a bunch of kids they need to feed, and they're willing to negotiate with you. I really need that meat and I really need to feed my family. What can we arrange so that I can do something about it? All this blurry gray thing is so typical in an economic collapse situation. I just keep sidetracking because it's unavoidable. I keep remembering stuff that has happened before or has happened recently as well, and I just can't stop myself from commenting about it because I know you guys are interested in it. And I think it's very interesting how ordinary citizens, how a normal small town neighborhood ends up butchering animals in the middle of the road because of the economic situation, because of the economic collapse that occurred 10 years ago. They're still feeling the impact. Meat is still very expensive around here. Meat used to be our most consumed, but by meat I mean cow meat. Cow meat used to be the most consumed sort of meat. There's not much of alternatives. I know that in other places, in other countries, there's lots of fish, pork, chicken, and a variety of meats. In Argentina, it's always been cows. It's always been veal meat, and that's what we usually eat. But the consumption per person has gone down from what used to be 70 kilos to 40 or 50 kilos lately. So it's going down because it's just so expensive for people to afford it. It has gone down a fair amount lately. And as time goes by, meat keeps getting more expensive, and you need it for a balanced diet. You just need meat as well. You need the vegetables, the dairy products, but meat is also an important part of your diet, especially for small kids. So it's understandable in some way, I suppose, that people react this way when they see the possibility of providing better for families, even if it's something that they've never thought they'd end up doing before. So, sorry, back to point 3, stocking up on food and water. Food is terribly inexpensive in USA in spite of the inflation and in spite of people thinking that it's getting more expensive. It is getting more expensive, but it's still cheaper than it is in Argentina. Food is cheaper than in Argentina in USA right now. So guys, do take advantage of that. Water is terribly important because, as I said before, the infrastructure suffers, water quality drops, there's problems with power because of the low maintenance, because of the more expensive repair parts, because of the lack of funds. So it's not rare, for example, in Argentina during summer, that in some towns, in some neighborhoods, they go without water for 2 or 3 days. If you've never been without water for a day or two, you really don't know what I'm talking about. But a blackout, not having electricity, that's nothing in comparison to opening the faucet and not having a single drop of water to wash your hands. Sooner or later you want to take a bath as well. Sooner or later you want to drink some water, and it usually happens pretty fast. It usually happens way before you get worried about not having electricity. So water is much worse than not having electricity. Do stock up on water. There's an easy way to do that. Just start getting the water bottles from soda drinks, or buying bottles of water, buying the buckets of water. Go for smaller containers because that's more easy to get around. If you have to ever wash your hands, you will understand that a 55-gallon barrel of water is not that handy, and you just cannot keep it in your counter if you want to wash your hands or brush your teeth. If you have to take a bath with the water you have in storage, in average with 5 liters, if you put up a system so as to hang a 5-liter bottle of water, that's usually enough to get a very quick bath, but enough to wash your hair if you're careful and not wasting the water. With 5 liters is usually enough to wash a guy's hair and your body. If it's for women that have longer hairs, you will probably need 5 liters for the hair alone and 5 liters for the body. For guys that have shorter hair is a bit easier. Just something to keep in mind if you've never done that before. That's what I've learned when I had to go without water for a few days and use some of the water I had stored. Thankfully, it haven't been much of a problem lately where I am now. And this summer, I've had no problem with water, but I know of neighborhoods close by that had gone without water for a couple of days or so. Yeah, some places, even as you get get more away from the city, they start like caring less about you protesting and complaining, so it's more likely that you'll be going without water for longer periods of times if there's problems. Maybe a week or so. The thing is here, what people do as soon as there's problems, they start blocking the streets, complaining so as to have the media sent over there so that they can publicly protest. And since the government tries to avoid that, when it's in more populated areas, they start worrying about the problem and solving or finding a solution to it quicker than if you're in the outskirts. So another thing to keep in mind, if it's just few people are being affected, it may be taking longer for them because they have places and problems in more populated areas to take care of first. So that's for point 3. Stock up on food and water. Food, just buy what you usually use. Check for some of the food supplies being offered on the internet, if they work for you, if they're good and your family likes them. I suggest having 6 or 12 months worth of food. And someone, I read a comment just a few days ago, well, how am I going to be stocking up 6 months of food? I don't have money for that. It's understandable. Of course, you may be already being affected by the economic situation, and it's unthinkable to stock up on 6 months worth of food. Well, to you, my friend, I say this: think that it's just going to be more expensive in the future. That food that you're having problems buying right now, it's going to be getting more expensive as time goes by. So I suggest finding a way to buying that food right now before it gets even more expensive than it used to be, and finding a place for it. Maybe you don't have it in your house. there's usually lots of space that people don't see under the beds, in the lock, in drawers you're not really using, in your dresser. There's usually place in your house that you can use. If not, if you really don't have any space, then maybe you could ask a friend, ask a family member, your parents, some brother, some sister, someone that is willing to, that has a space and is gonna be helping you out a bit with some extra space. But it's essential to have a lot of food in your house stored, not only because of the possibility of civil unrest, but also think about the possibility of you losing your job. If you lose your job and you still have 6 months worth of food, at least you know you have at least 6 months to get by before you're not able to put food on the table anymore. And that is a lot of peace of mind, folks, if you end up losing your job all of a sudden. For point 4, get in shape and start working out 3 times a week. By getting into shape, I don't mean becoming Brad Pitt. You're not going to be going for a Hollywood career or anything. Just get into a healthy physical condition. If you start working out 3 times a week, you're going to be getting there rather soon. If you drop on trash food that it's full of saturated fat and lots of things that aren't good for you, not to mention that they're usually expensive and you shouldn't be buying them anyway. So that's what I mean by getting into shape. I'm not talking about becoming the next Calvin Klein underwear model, but getting into a decent physical shape. Being able to run if you need so, being able to do labor, do physical work if it comes to that, if you have to do some of your own home repairs, and also because it's just good for you in general terms. If you're in a good shape, your cholesterol level drops a lot, you're much healthier generally speaking, your immune system goes up, and these are all things, desirable things, during times where people are more prone to get sick. Again, going back to the ways in which the economic collapse affects society in general that you may not even have thought of. When these things happen, the hygiene level in general of the society drops like crazy, because there's more poor people, because there's less money to buy cleaning products, and people start getting more dirty in general terms. I don't know how to describe that as well, but you see it on the street, people just not looking as well dressed as they used. The clothes are a bit more worn, a bit more dirty, and you notice that, especially when you travel to a first world country for a couple of weeks and you come back here, you notice people not being as clean as they are in other places. They're more dirty in general. There's more rat infestations in the city in general. There's more diseases spread through the city because the economic level has dropped in general. More poor people means a poor level of quality standard, and that involves hygiene problems as well, and diseases spreading more as well. So your immune system being in good condition does give you an advantage during an economic collapse. Doesn't seem linked at all, but it is. As time goes by, all these things happen. I know it because I've seen it here, and it's easy to see how it would be going down in USA as well if something similar happens. In case you have to fight yourself, I mean, if you're in a poor physical shape, if you look weak, if you look as an easy victim, as an easy target, criminals are more likely to go after you. So for a number of reasons, it's important to get into proper physical shape. It should be one of the top priorities. You often see people talking about guns, discussing guns in general and stuff, the guns for the zombies and all that stuff, and they have a terribly overweight problem that is killing them sooner than any criminal or zombie would ever do. So you have to think for a second and say, okay, if I have a cholesterol level that is twice as normal, maybe something is more likely to kill me before than looters, zombies, or whatever I could think of. And maybe that gun is not gonna do anything for me to prevent from the most likely thing to kill me because of my physical condition. You could also find ways of combining this with some other activities, some shooting sports that require you to move fast and be in a better physical condition. If you train on martial arts, if you do some hand-to-hand combat training, that's actually perfect because you kill 2 birds with 1 stone. You're preparing yourself physically and learning combat skills that may come handy to you in the future, and you're working out at the same time. You're also getting into contact with like-minded people as well, which is great, and that's going to be a point we're going to be seeing down further the list. So that's it for point 4. Get in shape and start working out 3 times a week. Also include cardiovascular activities, either running, walking, or bikes, the stationary bicycles. That's usually good if you don't want to hurt your knees. Maybe the bicycle is a good alternative and works on your cardio, which gives you several advantages. For point 5, put together a home survival emergency kit. First aid kit, flashlights, batteries, camping stuff, etc. Well, this is like the sleeping bags, a small mess kit so as to cook food if there's no services, if there's no power or gas. You need to process the food you have stored, you have stocked up on. It's better if the long-term food storage you're building up requires little or no cooking at all, because it's one less problem to worry about. In the little book I mentioned in a couple of videos ago, the Sarajevo Survival Guide, one of the problems people had is that they often found themselves not having fuel to cook their food. Of course, they didn't have much of ready to eat meals, so the food had to be processed, and they had no fuel. So they ended up cutting trees on their parks, on their cemeteries. They ended up cutting the trees of what used to be one of the most beautiful attractions of the Sarajevo city, which was its trees, because they really had no other option. They ended up removing floors, wood floors, furniture, anything they could find to cut it and use it as fuel. If you have the foresight to prepare for this, you will have enough fuel for a few weeks to process food if it comes to that. Other items to keep in mind for an emergency kit: batteries, that's basic stuff, guys. LED flashlights that make better use of those batteries. There were years here when you often had blackouts, like it was like, especially in summer, not a week went by without having like 4 or 5 blackouts, maybe on daily basis. I mean, it was really often, and it was practical to have rechargeable batteries so as to recharge them during the times when you had power and not use your regular batteries all the time, which can get expensive if blackouts occur as often as it did back then. So just, I mean, for a home survival emergency kit, also an emergency kit to be kept in your vehicle, maybe one in your office. That's an entire topic on its own, the emergency kit, the survival gear. And there's some stuff in the forum, the Modern Survivalist forum. You can search through some of the older posts. There's lots of information. Just check on the gear topic, and there's lots of information there. But I really can't go any much further than that in this video, because it requires several videos of its own. So let's keep moving on. On point 6, have a cash stash and put some of your savings into gold and silver. Well, the cash stash is something that I mentioned in the previous video. When an economy collapses, banks end up closing, ATMs end up drying up out of money pretty fast. Stores, those that are open, will rarely accept plastic money, credit cards, because either the network isn't working or there's not much trust in it anyway. So it's more likely that you'll end up having to use cash instead. Again, even now, 10 years after the economy collapsed, you still find places in Argentina, many of them actually, that just use cash. They don't want anything to do with plastic money. They just want cash. If you're buying fuel, it's very likely that they'll be asking for cash only. So cash is kind of important to have. In the previous video I mentioned it. I said at least a good idea is going for a month worth of expenses, worth of cash. Imagine many other disasters as well, where you may be having to leave your house all of a sudden with only what you have in hand. If you keep a small emergency bag, a bug out bag, and you have some cash in it, maybe the disaster is just forcing you out of your home for a couple of of days, and you just go to a hotel because you have the cash to do so in the next city. You know, if there's a forest fire, something like that, you end up leaving your house because they're asking you to evacuate, and it actually makes lots of sense because your life is in danger. If you have money, you have alternatives. My friend Nomad, in some of the survival blogs and forums, he said once something that I thought was very interesting. If you have a gun, $1,000 and a bottle of water, you can get yourself out of a number of problems. And I happen to agree with him because, you know, if water is just an essential thing to have, you don't get by. After a few hours you just need water, so the bottle of water is important. The gun is so as well, and with the money you can buy, you know, maybe not $1,000 anymore, let's just say $5,000. Does that sound correct given current inflation and such? Maybe if you have $5,000, you do have a number of alternatives. If you're stuck out of in another state, you may be able to rent a car, even buy one with that money, get by. You have options if you have money. So having money in hand is important. I want you guys to understand that the money you have in your bank, once the bank closes, you just don't have it with you anymore. I mean, that's that's very important for you guys to understand. The money you have in your digital account in the bank, once the bank closes, and if the bank closes forever, or if there's devaluation and that money starts to mean nothing, it just, the thing, I mean, let me put it this way, think that your dollar symbol next to your number of the money you have in your account suddenly turns into cents. You know what I mean? What happens then? Yeah, it's your purchasing power is suddenly destroyed by the economic collapse. So that brings me to the second part of point 6, savings into gold and silver. If you put some of that money you have into gold and silver, it means that if the economy collapses and your currency ends up devaluating, if the dollar devaluates, gold and silver won't. Okay? Gold and silver are the thing that will keep its purchasing value, even increase it considerably after the economy collapse and the dollar devaluates. You suddenly need, I don't know, $1,000 to buy a burger, okay? And you have the purchasing value of your money in your account suddenly means nothing. If you have stocked up on gold and silver, if you have bought gold and silver before, it will go up considerably. It will go up so to meet the amount it had gone down with the devaluation. Okay, it has been this way for thousands of years. I read once, and it's pretty interesting actually, that 200 years ago, with a gold coin, you could buy yourself a nice crafted pistol. When there was just a flintlock pistol with a gold coin, you could go to a gunsmith that made pistols by hand, and a gold coin would buy you a pistol. Today, with a gold coin, you can buy a pistol, and a very nice one actually, and a bit more. With a gold coin today, you can get a nice suit, a good pair of shoes, and a belt. And during Roman times, with a gold coin of similar size, you would buy yourself a good pair of sandals and a good garment for you to dress. So that same gold coin that bought you a fancy garment in those days, a fancy garment and a good pair of shoes, still buys you the parallel one in modern times. That would be a decent suit and a good pair of shoes. You can still buy that with that same amount of gold. So as time goes by, the purchasing power of gold and silver sort of keep the same. And you may get very picky with it and say, okay, sort of, what does that mean? I mean, gold and silver goes up and down all the time, right? But sort of, which may sound like a bad word in financial terms, because sort of isn't precise in any way, but in the bigger picture, you understand that having at least some purchasing value is much better than having none at all. If the paper money you have in your hand buys you nothing, then the sort of that the gold and silver gets you becomes extremely valuable for you. So it's like a time machine. Putting your money into gold and silver just protects your purchasing power, protects your savings. At least that amount is saved. How much money do you put into this? How much money do you put into gold and silver? That's basically up to you, how much money you have and how bad you think things will get. If you're, I mean, if I could go back in time just before the economy collapsed in Argentina, I would put every single cent I had into gold, because I know that it's completely protected after the economy collapsed. So I would have put 100% of my money into gold before the economy collapsed. Since there's no way of being so certain, since having a time machine is just a supposition and not something real, and you have no way of knowing what's going to be happening a year from now, you have to come to a compromise between what's likely to happen and not. So maybe putting 20% of your savings into gold and silver. Keep in mind that gold is smaller. If you have to leave your house, if you have to evacuate, maybe even leave the country, gold concentrates more currency, more purchasing power, and less weight. So even though silver is cheaper, so to say, gold is lighter. Okay, so maybe you don't have enough money to buy gold, but you buy silver. Just keep in mind that when you get to a point when you have considerably amount of weight in silver, it becomes an inconvenience if you ever have to leave your house in a hurry. Let's keep moving on, because I'm still running out of time and still have 3 points to go through. Point 7, review your expenses and monthly budget. Start with additional financial plans. Review your expenses. Remove everything you're throwing your money away at. It may not be like you're doing so, but once you sit down and review every single cent you spend during the month, you see that there may be things you're paying for that you don't actually need. There may be a cheaper cell phone plan, and maybe you have a cell phone you're not even using and paying for. There may be a cheaper insurance for you to go for. Shop around for a cheaper insurance. Maybe they're offering the exact same thing but on a more affordable budget. Expenses, fix the expenses you have. Check your credit card, what you're paying for. Sometimes these guys from the credit cards, they charge you for things you don't even use. Maybe they're charging you for international security, international health coverage through your credit card, and you're not using that at all, and you're not planning on traveling abroad anytime soon, so why pay for that? There's lots of things that are just expensive. Maybe the clothes you're buying are just too expensive. Maybe there's more affordable ones that are just as good as the ones you're paying for, but they're cheaper and the quality is just as good or even better. So go through all your expenses and see where you're just losing money and where you could be cutting down. And especially when it's about cutting down on expenses and not suffering anything. When you're buying, for example, when you buy bulk food, you may be buying the same quality, but since you're buying in bulk, you're actually paying less for it. So you're not only stocking up on food, which was our point 3, but you're also saving money in the process as well. So find all these things you could do so as to save money. What about using your vehicle which uses expensive gasoline, and sometimes you just go, you get into your car, you do 20-30 miles, go back and forth, and oh, I forgot something, so you go back again. Plan your week and plan your travels. Maybe you could just avoid 2 or 3 trips to the town, to 2 or 3 trips, by planning ahead and think, okay, I'm gonna be doing all this at the same time, going through everything and not forgetting anything. And that's a way of saving money as well through gas. What about having too many vehicles that you're not using? Again, maybe you bought one and you have an extra car. Maybe you have 2, something you have 3 cars and it's just 2 of you. Maybe you should be thinking about retiring 1 car. Even if you got it for cheap, it's still taking money out of your pocket through insurance and maintenance. So it may be a good idea to sell it, put that money into gold or silver, or buy some of the supplies I'm talking about here, and not having a fixed expense taking money out of your pocket every month. The second part of point 7, start with additional financial plans. When the economy collapsed here and we had like 25% unemployment, people said, okay, I'm an accountant, I'm a lawyer, I'm an architect, I just lost my job, what do I do? First thing they do is put a sign in the front of their door and start thinking about taking some clients of their own. They just got kicked out of their job, they just got fired from their job, their nice job that paid very well, maybe in an international firm, a big firm that had good benefits, paid well. Suddenly they don't have that anymore. They just got fired and they don't have that anymore. The first thing people do when they start looking for jobs and not finding any of them, they think, okay, I'm gonna be doing it on my own, I'm gonna be starting my own business. And it is a good idea, but it's a much better idea if you start before you actually lost your job. If you're an accountant, it doesn't take much of your time to start taking a couple of clients of your own. Just putting that sign on your door before you get fired means a lot. It just puts you ahead of the game before everyone else does it. Okay, as things start getting worse, this will be becoming more and more problematic, and it's going to be becoming more common for people to, scrounge for their jobs and their income any way they can within their possibilities. If you don't have a degree, if you just there's a number of businesses you could start right now on your own. Okay, what I'm going for here is that it's better if you start now before you actually need it, or before you need it bad. And maybe a way just to complement your income. Maybe you have your ordinary job and you have this side small home business you started doing whatever it is you like doing, and it's something that's just giving you a few extra bucks every month. And if you happen to lose your other job, it's something that you could put more of your time and effort into. Okay, and it's not as if you suddenly lose your job and wake up one morning with nothing to do and only then start planning on what it is you want to do with your life so as to make an income. Let's move on. What happened here? I have 7. There's a point that is missing. Okay guys, it's not actually 10 points, it happens to be 9. Reinforce your family and friend relationships. By this I mean all this economic collapse stuff is going to be causing a stress on you on a personal level. We saw it here in Argentina that the amount of people going to therapy went up considerably, like 20% every year after the economy collapsed. Because there's more stress, there's more things that you worry about, and this has an impact on you on a personal level and your family level as well. If you had problems with your wife, you end up getting divorced. If you have a poor relationship with your kids, it just gets worse. If you used to be a complicated guy to get around with, it's gonna be even worse, and people are gonna be moving away from you. So all this economic crisis is going to be having an impact on you on a personal level, on an emotional level. So it's better if you start reinforcing your bonds with your family, with your friends, even with yourself right now. If you're in peace with yourself, the problems you have that the world brings to you are not going to be as bad as if you are already struggling with yourself. If you have problems with alcohol, if you have drug abuse problems, if you have a number of things, it's much better if you start worrying and taking care of them right now before they are just one more thing to be worried after the economy collapses. Okay, the amount of drug abuse skyrocketed after the economy collapsed, and understandably so, especially among the young people. They found no hope in the future, and that brought a huge drug problem, which we're still going on. The abuse of tobacco drug, which is something that the kids smoke, and it just destroys your brain, and it's a huge problem. The drug problem in Argentina, I think that it's like, what is it, 50% of the young adults, males between 18 and 35, have a drug problem in this country. And I'm not sure if it's that different in USA as well. I know drugs are a serious problem as well. So take care of all this. I mean, even if it's a legally prescribed drug, you're still talking about the same problem. So something to consider. Your relationship with your family, with your wife, with your kids. Start making time for your wife. Have a good relationship. Reinforce your marriage as much as you can, because it's gonna be going through rough times along with everything else when the economy collapses. Okay, you're gonna be arguing more. You'll be going to have more differences than before. You'll be going through rougher times than before as things in general get worse. Your friends and your relationship with your friends, the same thing. Not only that, you're gonna be needing friends as well. You're gonna be needing help from people, from your friends, from the people around you. When starting your own business, when maybe having problems, security problems, it's nice to have your neighbor watching your back. If you have a guy that is capable of doing so, a good neighbor is invaluable in situations such as this ones, when an empty house means it's just gonna be looted sooner or later. If you happen to have a problem and you need to leave your house for a few days, it's nice to have someone that you can actually count on and checking out your place, a couple of times a day. Very important to have good relationships, even if most people will not end up helping as much as you thought they would during times like these. I think that 9 out of 10 people that you think you can count on, they're gonna be letting you down during serious problems, because you're going to be having problems of their own, because it's easier to talk than to actually do. So it's easy to be all nice and say, yeah, count on me and I got your back, and when you actually need it, expect a lot of people, actually expect most people to not be there for you. Still, that leaves a percentage of people that will be there for you, that will be helping you, and you should have as many of those as possible. Let's move on and to point 10, improve your home and personal security. As things get worse, there's more crime, there's more problems in the streets, and forget about the rioting and looting for a second. I understand it's more fancy and it's more eye-catching, like seeing a crowd burning stores. It's very appealing to the eye when you see like people that may have been your neighbors or are actually your neighbors burning the McDonald's next door. That's something that catches your attention. But after that happens, once order is restored, there's the rest of things to get taken care of. Okay, what is likely to kill you in terms of crime and in terms of security problems isn't that event, that violent event that you saw on TV or you just saw on the street when passing by. What actually kills you is the everyday crime. The crime when in the parking lot after going to the supermarket. It's 3 p.m. The sun is up. Everyone is going around, and still, in spite of that, someone approaches, sticks a gun in your face. Someone comes from behind, whispers to you. These things happen when you least expect them. There are situations and there are moments of the day where that are more dangerous. When you're going in your house or getting out of your house with a house that already has a good security setup and is not easily breaking into. I'm not even going into the houses that the security setup in most American families is that they don't even lock the back door, okay? Or they have like this mosquito screen and think that that's protection. That is not. I mean, mosquito nets are just intended to keep mosquitoes away, not savage criminals out of your house, okay? If you leave your back door open or your front door open, I mean, criminals, they do have enough brain cells so to actually walk around your house to your back door. They will actually prefer that because it's less visible from the street. Okay, folks? So if you don't even have that basic home security mindset, then you have bigger problems to worry about than criminals attacking you when leaving or entering your house. But since in Argentina the crime problem has been going on for a good amount of time now, and all houses have a basic security much better than the one in USA, criminals find themselves attacking when you're the most vulnerable, and that happens to be when going in and out of your house. That's when they can just approach you, put a gun on your head, and say, okay, let's go inside again. That's when crime is most likely to be. That's when criminals are more likely to be attacking, when your house is better prepared. And then on terms of personal security, you might want to consider actually carrying your firearm with you on a daily basis. If you don't have your firearm with you, it's not going to be of much help. So going back to point 1 in the top, your handgun, when you train with it, when you know how to use it, you may want to go as well for a carry permit as well. Having the weapon with you at all times will mean you have an advantage, and you have an opportunity to get away of situations that would otherwise end up not so well. It happens here that sometimes if you are armed and you have an adequate level of awareness, you actually see these guys coming for you, you see their intentions, you see a couple of them closing in, and if you have a weapon, you can do something about it. And by doing something about it, I'm not talking about killing anyone. If you have enough awareness so as to detect their actions before it's too late, you may actually draw on them, and they will become extremely reasonable at gunpoint, say they're sorry, or say that this is all a mistake, or whatever it is, and they will just turn around and leave. And that's the best possible outcome you can expect when being attacked by criminals and you being armed. Not having to shoot anyone. Guys, shooting someone is, I'm not going to be getting into the moral stuff. If you're over that, having a guy shot is also a huge headache in terms of finances as well. You'll be having to pay. You'll have to pay for every shot fired with thousands of dollars worth of lawyers and legal defense. So by all means, and looking at it from all possible perspectives, it's better if you just don't have to end up shooting anyone, if you draw before the situation gets beyond your control. So again, because of this, having the weapon with you at all times, in my opinion, is extremely important, folks. So keep that in mind for your personal security. Also, your personal security involves your family as well. It's of no use if you're extremely careful, if you take the time to have the firearms training, if you do the hand-to-hand combat stuff, and you do all this, and your family is the most spoiled, most careless people on the planet. You're only as strong as your weakest link in your family as well. If you have your teenager kids leaving the doors open all day and just forgetting the keys in the door, or not locking the door at all, being extremely careless, that's a problem for you, and you have to take care of it. You have to have the conversation with your kids, get them involved, your wife as well. You have to have your family union is important, and everyone being on board in terms of security is basic stuff, guys. So folks, that's gonna be it for now. It's almost an hour since I started talking. I hope you enjoyed it, you have good ideas. Remember to subscribe, because you'll be getting more good stuff online. I'll be making more videos, which I'm sure you're gonna be enjoying, so subscribe. Remember to check the Modern Survivalist blog as well. Also check the forums where I'm there almost every day talking with the people, and there's other like-minded individuals in the forum over at the Modern Survivalist as well. So join the forum as well and get yourself involved, get yourself in the community, and get more ideas. Thanks for watching this video, and see you next time. Take care, and bye bye.